this so that in case somebody doesn't see it in chat currently. General question. After completing the C# spec track certificate, should someone be looking for internships or right to entry-level programming jobs? Any advice you have regarding how to get into the field would be appreciated by all of us, I think. Sorry, I meant that to be for everyone. Okay. So hang on. By the way, that is a fantastic question, Chris, and it is one that I can answer, believe it or not. I'm actually coming from a chief information officer, chief technology officer, and also being in this industry my entire life and having most of my friends in the industry. In fact, many of my friends went on to work and now work as executives at Intel and Microsoft as well as Apple. In fact, my best friend in high school, elementary, middle, and high school, went to work for Intel and actually invented FireWire, IEEE 1384, and a couple other things. And almost all of my friends from the DC area work for Microsoft. So I'm going to go ahead and have a very, very quick discussion about that, how to break into this industry, which is very hard, while we give everybody just a couple minutes to show up. But before I do that, hang on, did I lose somebody? I lost somebody. Who did I lose? Oh, hopefully they'll come back. Just 2 minutes. There's a great book by, it's called Outliers. I forget the guy's name now. Why am I drawing a blank on the author? But anyways, he discusses how people get successful, how they become experts in their field, how they become athletes, that type of thing. Hang on. And one of the things that he found through all his research, and again, it wasn't necessarily scientific, it was just interviewing and these various people. One of the things he found is that there wasn't IQ, there wasn't really anything other than hard work that identified whether someone was going to be successful or not. And I believe that to be true. My kids played instruments, they played sports, they did various other things. And when they got to high school, we talked to them because they were playing 3 instruments. They practiced 2 hours a day, 7 days a week, even on vacations up until they reached 9th grade. And we gave the option to continue. And if they continued, in order for them to meet this requirement, they would have to step up their game, right? So they had practiced 2 hours a day, 7 days a week for, 8 years of their life, and they had gotten good, but they weren't great. They had put in about 1,500 hours into this musical instrument. We told them at that point they would have to go to 8 hours a day for the next 4 years in order to be great, in order to make a career out of it, whether it was music, whether it was sports. And by the way, my son wanted to be a professional soccer player. Pay is horrible, but the commitment is the same, right? You have to put in your 6 to 8 hours a day, 5, 6 days a week. Programming is exactly the same thing. So if somebody comes to me and says, hey, if I take C#1, C#2, ASP.NET, and Intro to Computer Programming, maybe Python, am I ready? No, you're not. In order for you to be good enough to be even entry level, Malcolm Gladwell, thank you, Chris. You have to put in your time. You have to put in the hours, and you're just not getting those hours in education through the classes. Hang on, I'm adding people to the group as we're chatting. So in order to be really good, you have to have 10,000 hours. Here's what's interesting. Most companies want 3 to 4 years of experience. That 3 to 4 years of experience is 10,000 hours. If you work 40 hours a week for 4 years, you're putting in 10,000 hours of skill. That's why you become an expert in your field in 3 to 4 years in this career. So that's why everybody wants that level of experience, right? So with that said, my son is actually going to become a mechanical engineer, and he had to take a free internship. So he took his money that he had saved, got an apartment in Indiana, and went to work for, I forget the name of the company now. Doesn't matter. He was basically an internship as an engineer, and it was one of the most amazing experiences of his life. He said in 2 weeks, he learned more than he had learned in all of his college experience. I'm sorry, not in 2 weeks, in 2 months. So the internship is probably the best way to get your foot into the door. It is highly recommended that you find not just an internship, but an internship that will allow you to kind of spread your wings in the skill set to get the experience that you're going to need to be successful as a more routine programmer or developer. Yeah, you're welcome, Chris. And by the way, I don't want to be negative, because it's not negative at all. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that it takes time. And even if you're not initially successful, if you continue just beating the horse, that's a horrible analogy, I apologize. You just keep trying, even if it's manufactured effort, like you're creating your own content, you're creating your website. This ASP.NET course is an example of that. By the way, Jenna, that is a very good point. With today's situation, that's changing though, because what's happening is, and this was a conversation that I had earlier regarding online. Many technical companies are going online, and therefore they're allowing internships again. By the way, my son found an internship this summer during the whole COVID crisis. So they do exist, but many of the companies now, and I know this for a fact, Electronic Arts in Sanford, Florida, Central Florida, because I had my nephew works there. They're absolutely doing internships again, and they're doing them online. Everything's going online. So but Jenna, you and I had a conversation about that. You actually kind of hinted that they might allow you, because you have a lot of freedom, to actually have the perfect internship in that you can do whatever you want. So you can actually give them a project, right? Okay, yeah. So I thought that was a conversation we had. So it is harder, don't get me wrong, but it is still possible. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start the conversation. Excuse me. I do have quite a few participants. There might be some more that show up. There's a Galaxy S10. I'm not sure who that is. You can actually right-click, and I think you right-click and change your name. Okay, hang on, Val. With that said, I'm repeating this question, by the way. With that said, are there any resources out there that foster private pet project or peer projects where we can code projects for practice if internships are not an option? There are. There's, hang on, I'm trying to remember the name of it. Not Greenlancer, Freelancer.com. Freelancer.com is a website where you can go and actually bid on these various jobs. And it's a great place for people that don't have any coding experience at all. In fact, my son was 14 years old, and he went to Freelancer.com and started doing jobs on Freelancer.com in Java. So that, and by the way, that propelled his career before he was even 16. So evidence again that yes, it is possible, and yes, you can do it, because what you can do is go there and bid on these projects to create a database application, web-based database application. In fact, using the skills you're learning in ASP.NET on Freelancer.com, and charge somebody 25 bucks. And what they do is they come back and they rate you. Okay, maybe you mess up and you have to start over again, but eventually you'll get good, you'll start getting ratings. And as your ratings go up, you become more in demand. And once your ratings get to a certain point, not only do your ratings go up and your value goes up and you are able to get contracts getting paid more, we used to hire the top tier talent off of Freelancer.com. So we would actually offer and allow them to work from home and pay them really, really well. The downside is you're competing with people all over the world. So making money there is really, really hard. Sorry about that, Val. Does that kind of answer your question? Okay, and by the way, it's not about making money. One of the things that really concerns me is when somebody comes to my class, and the very first thing I do is have everybody introduce themselves. Hey, why are you here? I really am interested. What's your experience and why are you here? Because I want to make sure that I can provide the most I can provide given your specific context, your desires. And then when somebody says, I'm here because I want to make a lot of money, I'm not saying you won't be successful, but it's not a career for that type of person. It's a career that you'll struggle with unless you are absolutely in love with it as well. I mean, the money's a side benefit, right? This industry pays extremely well, but it pays extremely well because it takes a lot of time to become an expert at it. So just keep that in mind. By the way, don't do it for the money. Just do it because you love it. That way you'll spend more time doing it. You won't get frustrated with it. And before you know it, people are starting to throw things your way that you would normally do for free, and they're willing to pay you for it. Okay, sorry, any more questions or? No? Okay. By the way, I'm assuming, I'm going to share my screen here in a minute. Assuming everybody here is obviously interested in programming and desire to program, I actually can see that. Like in a course, when somebody's taking a course, and this course is a perfect example of that, there are students that do just enough, right, to complete the project and get the grade. And that's great. And you can pass the course and you can move on. I do have students that use Chegg and Bartley and other tools in earlier classes, C#1, C#2, and then they get to here and it becomes apparent that now that they're here, that they didn't necessarily spend the time and effort in those previous courses. So by the time you're in this course, you're actually building something from scratch. You're actually taking technologies that you don't necessarily even have knowledge of yet. And yet you're creating this create, read, update, delete, full stack application using Microsoft, using IIS, using Entity Framework, using MVC, or even MVVC, which is Model View View Controller, or Model View Controller, which is basically breaking the code into multiple parts. You're actually using C#. You're actually using SQL Server. Even though you may not even know you're using SQL Server, Entity Framework is what they call an object relational map around a class that allows that class to define a SQL table, columns, even constraints on the table. So what we're doing is what you will be doing in the real world most of your life, and making a good living at it. I mean, this is something that, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, that you can take at the end of this course, repeat what I've done, or what you have done, sorry, not what I've done, what you have done in this course multiple times, and each time starting to go in and change something, add a new column, add a new table, add a new UI for a new table that's linked to another table that's in your data. Create some aggregate data that displays in the UI. Just slowly add some security, Google login, Microsoft login, like single stage I'm sorry, what is it? SSO, whatever, I forget what SSO stands for, but anyways, single sign-on, sorry. So that you can actually have someone access the application securely. Once you do that, you can either do that just for fun, or you can find a contract on Freelancer or somebody. I'm telling you, my entire life, it's people. Like it's like a lawyer. Like if you have a lawyer in family, that's who you go to ask questions. If you have a CPA in the family, you go and ask the CPA questions related to your taxes. As a computer programmer, you're going to have those people, friends, family, or just random people asking you questions. Take that, run with it, do it for free. I'm sorry, my internship priced a customer portal at $621 a month, plus $2,500 out. Exactly, Jenna, that's a perfect example. Create a blog. I used to hire authors that would write because SEO, right? So guerrilla marketing, search engine optimization. Create a blog. These bloggers were making $100,000 a year. Create a YouTube channel. I have a YouTube channel that I didn't do it for any purpose other than I just posted videos. I've got 85,000 subscribers and 66 million views. It took 10 years, but just do it. And you'll get that experience. And before you know it, people are hiring you and paying you to do it. So, by the way, I didn't mean to go off on that for that long. I apologize. I hope it was valuable to someone. Hang on. Chris, you are sending me something privately, so I'm not going to read it out loud. Hang on. Okay, no, it would not. By the way, if you don't mind, I'm going to announce this question. Can I get your permission? Yeah, okay. I had a question regarding the virtual machine. Number one, the virtual machine, I do recommend it, but it's not required because many people don't have the hardware to support it because it does require more memory. 16 gigs is kind of the minimum. The virtual machine allows you to basically make changes. Like you could go and do week 1, be successful, go into week 2 and totally screw up the site week 2. In the virtual machine, you have snapshots. So you could, but when you finish week 1, you could snapshot and then go to do week 2 and then snapshot. And if anything goes wrong, you can go back to the previous snapshot. So you're going back to a point in time where it was working. That's why I like the virtual machine. And that's an advantage to me. I can actually have 8 virtual machines. So each one of those, I actually give you one virtual machine and there would be snapshots for week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So if I had a student that was struggling in week 5, but it worked in week 4, I could give them a known working week 4 and they could redo week 5 and be successful. That's why I like virtual machines. Yes, it is. Absolutely. Similar, but yes, actually, it is almost identical because you can branch it and have one branch for .NET and one branch for .NET Framework 4.8. So you could actually be developing this application in .NET Core and 4.8 at the same time inside the virtual machine and just keep jumping back and forth between those 2 branches. So yes. I thought I sent the link out for the NonHome Edition for Jenna. Did I not send that out to everyone?
For me, because I'm the person who asked, and I saw somebody else had the issue in the peer-to-peer, like when you go to that edition, it asks you to put in your college, and then I put in our college, and then it takes me to this page, and then I click on the windows, and it takes me back to that link to that college. And it never actually, it'll let me do Office and all that, but it won't let me do Windows, the actual, just the OS. Like the other stuff, yes, but I don't know if that's just me or.
Well, I haven't tested it in 6 months or so. So let me go on and see if it gives me access to Windows. It should. As a student of CCIT, you should have access to Windows 10 Professional or Education, one of them. So I'll take a look at that again, and I'll get back to you. Okay. By the way, another question or another relationship to that virtual machine. The question was, and we do also get Azure as part of a student. It's basically a credit for 1 year to use Azure. Initially, Azure only gave us access to a web and a database instance, and that was it. Now they give us a credit. The problem with the credit, if you use it for anything, it goes away very, very rapidly. So to answer your question, no, I wouldn't recommend using the credit for a virtual machine because you'll run out of money before you get through this course, and therefore you won't be able to use the web portal. So, okay. By the way, I've been working with AWS and Azure to try to get students more. And AWS actually does. They give me a $40,000 grant for each course I teach. Problem is I have to apply for that grant over and over and over again. At least I used to have to. And it was just didn't work because we'd have adjuncts teaching my courses and they wouldn't go through the process to get that grant. So they couldn't teach the course. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open up a project. Give me a second. Who wants to volunteer their week 1 submission? If I graded it and gave you 100, be proud and let me know. Okay, Jenna, go for it. Mine's funny. Oh yeah, was yours the Skyrim? Yeah, okay, hang on. Give me just a minute. By the way, I wish I had the permission. There was another one that was submitted that was fantastic in terms of UI, visually, it was aesthetics. It was had a guy playing a guitar. It was really nice. By the way, I have not. Oh, Sean. By the way, that was beautiful. Um, let's see, and I like that. A lot of my students actually really go above and beyond and build it to meet their requirements. In fact, I have students that use this for their internship. Like if they're doing the virtual internship, they'll actually use this project to create the project for the virtual internship. Jenna, your last name, I apologize, was Ava. The virtual internship is if you, because of COVID, a lot of students aren't able to find actual internships. So your professor acts as your employer and creates a project for you. And a lot of the students will actually use the ASP.NET knowledge to create the application for that virtual internship. Hey, Jenna, what was your last name? I apologize. I have a lot of students in the class.
Martin. No worries.
Thank you.
Oh, I said it privately somehow. Oh, I see. I see private message in chat too. Never mind. Chris just helped me with getting the thing fixed for the Windows 10. Thank you.
Okay. Jenna, I almost have your project open. I'm extracting it now. And then I'll share the screen. By the way, also, if you're not using the virtual machine, it appears that, uh-oh. It appears that most people are not using the virtual machine. Make sure you update Visual Studio to the latest version. I've had a couple students that had problems with their projects they submitted. Okay. Give me 1 second. I'm sharing my screen as soon as I find this silly menu. There it is. Actually, you know what? I'm going to share the application, not the screen. So give me a second. Okay, I lied. I'm sharing the entire screen. Can you actually see that okay, or is it too much? Too big?
Seems okay, but we haven't, like, I don't know. I can read it says 0 warnings, for example.
Okay, well that's the key. Hang on, I gotta get rid of all that data. And for some reason, Jenna, I know I opened your project and it ran fine earlier, but it's now saying it's incompatible.
No. At least you already created it. No takebacks.
Yeah. That's crazy. Hang on. What the heck is going on? I got another way to get to it. I apologize. Let me try again.
I'm glad that happens to you sometimes too, though, because it happens to me, and I just figure it's because I'm doing something silly wrong.
It's, you know, Azure is this, or not Azure, ASP.NET is absolutely the hardest class to teach because of so many possible configuration issues that this class, I don't even allow adjuncts to teach it. In fact, I'm the only professor that does teach this course because of all the issues. There's your. Hang on, am I in a different product? Oh, it's Blend. Are you kidding me? Sorry. Somehow I must, when I was in my C# lecture earlier, apparently I changed the default for opening .sln files to Blend. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yeah. Well, there's nothing there, but yeah.
Yeah, it's empty right this second. This is actually good. I'm gonna have some stuff for you guys to look at here in a second. Let me open up the chat window again. Sorry, when I do this screen share deal, I lose things and I can't find them. The chat window and the participant window, there they are. Yes, checkpoint and snapshot are the same thing, Chris. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and first, when you're working on this project, one of the things that commonly comes up with students and they struggle to have a problem getting the database to work. We're just starting out. So what's happening is the development mode is set to check to see if there's a database, and if there's not a database, to go ahead and create one. And what it does is it bases that database creation on two things. It bases it on, actually, for our configuration in this particular course, the context that you have defined here. Okay. And I'm going to ask again, can everybody see that okay?
It'd be better if you like zoomed in a little, I think.
Okay, let
I
me,
can't read that.
I can do that. How about that?
Yeah, at least I can. I'm not gonna talk for everybody, but.
Okay. Anyways, so and then that context actually goes over to your context over here in your Solution Explorer for your school initializer. And you guys set this up. What this is doing is creating tables based on your models in the event student course that you defined in your models folder here, right? And you're also seeding it with this data. So every time a database is missing, you're going to get all of these tables recreated with this data, again, reset. So if you made changes to it, it's going to reset all that data. There's no way to just modify the table. Later, what we're going to do is we're actually going to go into what they call code first migrations. And what that will do is allow us to make changes to a model, and then a script will be written automatically that will update the existing database with the changes and not delete any data. So just know that that is coming. I had a question about that earlier today from a student in email, and I just want to make sure that was clear. Second, occasionally students will run into issues with their project because what they did is they made a typo. And in the typo, because this is all built out, right? The tables and the data is built out, and they made a typo, so the database exists and they can't change it, you'll have to actually delete your database. And the way you delete your database is through, on the left-hand side, you'll actually have down here, a SQL Server Object Explorer. And then you can drill in, go to your local DB, go to your databases. I know this is hard for you to see, and I can't zoom this part in. Yeah. And right now, under databases, there are no databases listed. Matter of fact, when I grade your guys' assignments, when I grade this, like when I open up Jenna's assignment to grade, the first thing I do is delete any past databases I have to make sure that I'm working with her code and her context, so that I know for sure it's creating the proper data. So let's go ahead and run her project, and then I'm going to come back here and look at the SQL Server Object Explorer. Okay. By the way, if you're a Skyrim fan, you'll kind of get this. I spent way too much time on Skyrim, actually, even in VR. I have Skyrim for VR, which makes me sick, motion sick really bad, but it's still fun. Nothing happens with database creation right this very second. But if I click on students, what it's going to do is look for that database. It doesn't exist. It's going to create it, and it creates it in your user folder for your login profile. And the first time I run this, it's going to be a little slow because it is creating the database, tables, and column of data. And you'll see that. I'm going to go ahead and close out of that. And then I'm going to go over here and refresh databases. And now you'll see Jenna's database sitting here in the view. You can also view the tables that are created. And you can even view the data that exists in each one of those tables. Well, theoretically, I'm not sure what's taking so long. Oh, because course doesn't have anything yet, sorry. That's the definition and view data. And there's the data inside of the student table. Any questions? No? Let me ask you a question. Whose assignment have I not graded yet? Anybody? By the way, you can do the yes, no in participant, or just chat if you wanted to communicate. Thank you, Jenna, obviously. Okay, anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and go back to that real quick and.
Oops, somebody sent me something privately. Oh, there you go. He figured it out.
Okay, Matt, I apologize. You unfortunately have a last name starting with W, so I didn't get to you. I apologize. as soon as this is over, I should be able to get it to them all today. Did you have any questions, or are you pretty comfortable? By the way, the number one problem that I have starting out with week one is students not replacing SP College everywhere within the UI. Yeah, that's very, very common. Students forgetting their collaboration statement. And by the way, I do allow students to go ahead and, especially for the first week or two, to resubmit with, like, I'll make a comment and I'll drop the grade just a hair and let them resubmit for a regrade. So if you were one of those people, just know that you can resubmit it for full credit. Okay. Let's go ahead and go over a couple of these things real quick. Again, we kind of had a brief discussion already, so I don't want to reiterate or repeat, but now that you've had the opportunity to see week one completed and maybe even get a grade for it so you know that you were on the right track. Two things that I want to show you that are common problems with Visual Studio and ASP.NET in case you run into it in the real world. The first one is in the case of, hang on. I don't have any specific examples right now, though I had many, many students that had this problem. There's a file called application host.config. And if you find one of those, if you try to open the project and it's giving you issues, the very first thing you want to do is get rid of application host.config, just delete it. So if you run into the problem, that's the first thing you want to do. The second thing that is common is when you run your project, and I've had a couple students email me this already, it's not allowing them to run IIS, the web server, to host their project. And I wish the person that was having that problem that just emailed me was here in this class or in this lecture right this second, because it's this simple to fix. Go into your project and look for your csproj, the CSPROJ file, and open that in Notepad. And by the way, I'm gonna publish this video, so if you run into it at any point in the next 7 weeks, you can come back here and just watch this video. Go to the very, very bottom. Look for your development server, which is right here, and delete those 3 lines of code. And then save the csproj file, and then it will work. IIS will work again. That is a extremely common problem when working with ASP.NET. You will run into it, if not now, at some point in your career, unless Microsoft fixes the problem. Microsoft knows about this. They could easily solve this, and they have, by the way. When I started teaching this 5 years ago, it was terrible. It was so difficult because there were so many bugs. Now, today, there's just a few straggling bugs that make it difficult, and this is an example of one. And you may or may not find that if you did a Google search. There are, I think there's one website that kind of discusses it. Anyways, so just save it, and you're done. Web config is another one that is a common issue, and I just want to talk about this one real quick. Let me pull it in here real quick. When you're working, remember I told you to delete the database? Another strategy, a very quick and easy strategy, is just to change the name of your initial catalog. That's your database name. So if you forget about the SQL Object Explorer and deleting it through SQL Object Explorer, or if you just want to have a couple different databases to test, all you have to do is just change that, and that'll recreate your database automatically. Now, once we get a little bit further into the course, that won't happen anymore, because we're going to go to code first migration, and you're going to have to actually physically create the database. It won't fire off and could be created automatically. Any questions? No. Let me talk about one more thing real quick, and then I'll open it up a little bit more to the student. By the way, Sean, do you mind if I open yours? You don't have to give permission. I do not, I do not mind. Okay, very good. I'm going to open up Sean's real quick just to show you what he did with the UI, which is really nice. Sean, what was your last name? I'm sorry. Yeah, just want to make sure that was the right one. Okay. Again, it wasn't anything great or big in terms, but it was profound enough to where it kind of caught my attention when I opened it, because he actually took and pulled in an image that fit within his header. He actually, did you change your colors, or is that standard colors? Because it seems to match the guitar really well. Sean? Yeah, okay. So, and by the way, you're welcome to do this. Go ahead and modify the CSS, add content. You can even add new pages. Go in under contact and create a really nice contact page for you. Again, what's going to happen is this is actually going to go to Azure. So you'll have this for at least a year after this course ends. Well, close to a year after this course ends. And you can actually use this as part of your e-resume. To create, so you can actually show people what you've created, a full-blown create read. And what you want to do is try to get it away from cookie cutter as much as possible. You want to make it appear that, hey, this isn't just something they ran through in a course. They actually created something, and they've customized it, and it kind of fits a different motif. In fact, in the case of Serenity College of Music, it could even go further. It could be actually a web page that keeps track of musicians and the top. In fact, again, Sean, my kids played music, and we used to go to, I forget what it's called now, that school on First Street. But they would have had this would have been a fantastic tool for them, because they could have managed their teachers, they could have managed their students, they could have actually, you could even add a billing component in here to actually charge the students and keep track of, whether they paid or not, whether they missed a meeting, whether they're going to skip, like if a student's going to skip a meeting, that type of thing. So, by the way, speaking of getting an opportunity, I guarantee you, if you went to, I think it was called Bringing Music. If you went to Bringing Music and said, hey, I'm a student of computer science, I have this idea, it doesn't look like you really have anything that's working. What do you think if I wrote an app for you that kind of managed your students, your classes, your classrooms, your guitar, sax, singing teachers, whatever? They might jump all over that, and you may not get any money for it, but you will get a reward later on, because you're going to have now a skill that other people are going to be interested in. You now have a skill that's a commodity that you can sell, right? By the way, that's kind of what threw me for that. I just kind of, in fact, because Bringing Music is a school that we went to for a long time and they had nothing, it kind of brought to my attention that as a possibility when I saw Sean's application. Any questions? If not, again, I didn't have a lecture per se. The student success in this course this semester is just off the charts. It blows me away. It makes me proud to have so many students. They're so successful. I'm not saying not everybody got it perfect. There were, things that students struggled with occasionally, but by history, this has been the most successful course I've ever taught. And I have over 50 students. And what I mean by that is students aren't running into the problems that we've had in the past. Now that may come later, but normally it starts at the very, very beginning. That's why the virtual machine exists, because I literally couldn't get students to get it to work on their local computers. I had to get them to use the virtual machine in order to complete the project. Can you kind of explain what that means behind the little? Yes, absolutely. Hey, and just want to be careful because the bind, we're not referring to the C# data bind, right? C#2 class. You're just referring
No,
to,
actually,
what was that?
that one I linked, if you can see that.
Yeah, I can. Okay. That's by the way, that's why I think this class or these lectures are they're not lectures. These kind of open Zoom meetings are valuable because I don't always know what a student is struggling with in terms of concept. And that question is a fantastic question because I remember the first time I played with MVC, I struggled with that very concept. And it took me a while to, excuse me, took me a deep dive to really truly understand it. So hang on, where we got content, that's controllers, okay. So when we create a model and then we create or scaffold that model, the scaffolding is basically writing the code for us automatically. The code that is written is something that you could write manually by hand. And in fact, when you become really, really skilled at programming, you kind of go away from the automated systems that create the structure code for you or the stub code for you, right? Because it sometimes locks you in. Although I'll continue using it because it gives me a place to start, right? So what we have in ASP.NET and model view controllers is we have a web request that is not actually calling a web page. So when, when you have a link, what you're doing is you're sending a request to the server and saying, hey, I want students. You're not saying go to students.html or studentview.html or studentupdate.html, that type of thing. What you're doing instead is you're actually sending a call to just a path student. The controller is responsible for determining where you really want to go. So the controller will have the mechanisms in place to just fire off a view to display, like, let's say all students, and I'll explain that in just 1 second. It will actually send, and it will also send the data necessary for that view to display information. So in the event that I wanted to display details of a specific student, I would go to the student view and I would send either in the body of the message or body of the web page or in the URL a student ID. And that student ID is read by the controller, and the controller then sends it to the appropriate view so that it can display the appropriate data. So that's what a controller does. And it's very, very confusing because if you're looking at HTML and you've taken these HTML courses, your assumption is that when you go to a URL page or go to a URL, you're calling a specific page in a specific directory at a specific location. That's not happening here, right? In ASP.NET, we have to go to the controller first. So in the event that I call the student path from the URL. And let me run it real quick. Actually, I may already be running it. So if I just do /student, or it may be students, I don't know, hang on. Nope, no, it's just student, okay. Notice I didn't specify a page. I just specified student. The student controller, because it's named student controller, knows student, sorry, is what I should be looking for in the call in the URL. So there's some implied magic going on, and that makes it confusing to understand. But if I open up the controller, I can actually see the first thing I do is have an index. So that's the first control. If I just see student, I know I'm wanting to see a list of all students. So go to the index page. Let me stop this real quick. So go to the students page and display index.cshtml. Now within that page, notice that we have these iterations for each and every student. And what we're doing is we're creating hyperlinks for each student, and we're creating actions for them. Well, in the case down here, we're creating actions for them. Edit, details, and delete. We also have a create action. These are what the controller reads to determine how to handle the call. So if we go back over to the student controller, let's say somebody clicked edit on one of the students that was returned, because again, this is a for loop, right? So it's returning for each student a row. The controller said, hey, display all these students from this model. And this is now iterating through each one of those students and creating some HTML to display every student with a link for an edit, details, and delete for each student. There's also, with that, a student ID. So when somebody clicks on that link, it says, okay, edit, and then this student ID. So you'll see here, here's the action for details, and it's going to request ID. Here's a create. Notice there's no ID because there's no student associated with the create. Here's the edit. So this is the action code in the controller, student controller, that looks to see if the call to the student folder has an action called edit, and whether or not it has an ID so it knows which student to edit. If it doesn't, by the way, this question mark here basically allows an integer to be nullable without failing. So you'll see that a lot in C# just in general, but in this case, that's what's happening here. So it's going to accept a call to edit without an ID. The problem is what's going to happen is it's going to come down here, check, and see that student ID is null, and it's going to return HTTP not found as a custom error. Otherwise, it's going to go ahead and return a view of student. So to go here to actions, edit, and display all the data associated with that student. Okay, so that question came from Jenna. That was a fantastic question. And now I have a question for you. Does that answer your question? Beautiful. Anybody else? By the way, as you go through the course, that's kind of what this course is about. Modifying as we get into week 4, 5, and so on and further, you're modifying these controllers to handle the data and displaying it in the web page, the views, the detail page, the index page, whatever. And by the way, Jenna, that's I think where these lectures or these talks are very beneficial, because I go back to when I started this as a kid. I wanted to be a programmer very early in life, and I'm 51. So imagine back when I was in 7th grade and I was trying to learn programming, at the time C or Pascal. There was no subject matter experts, none. And it was extremely frustrating and difficult for a young person. When I was there, we had we didn't have internet. We didn't have internet. We didn't have anything, no knowledge. The only thing we got was books. So I'd actually hang out at the bookstore and just read all day long. That's what I did as a child. So, but I longed for someone like me to be able to get someone started in or understanding technology, because a lot of the technology was just so magic, so black box. So there was nothing that could explain the context. And by the way, I can't say that I didn't want to break into games and stuff. So I was learning about sectors on floppy disks and how um, they were using bad sectors to basically copy protect the floppy disks and that type of thing. So it was very, very hard to learn. So again, I appreciate these questions because that's where I can add value to this course. Any other questions? Thank you, Chris. Appreciate the thumbs up. I am going to go ahead and end it there. If you have no questions, I will be doing these. I'm going to try to do them every week. I will tell you, I'm just letting you know in advance, my father is going in for pretty significant heart surgery on Friday. And I'm probably going to drive up Thursday. He's in Indiana. And depending on what happens there, next week I may miss the opportunity to do a Zoom. I hope that is not the case. I hope that I'm able to go ahead and push out the Zoom meeting. And that's one of the reasons I'm waiting until a day or two before I do a Zoom, just so I don't plan something and then have to back out of it. So. Okay, well, if that's it, I want to thank you again for your time. I really enjoy teaching this class. This is one of my most passionate technologies and again, I kind of stuck with ASP.NET 1.0 back when I lived in Washington, DC and fell in love with it, so. Okay, I will not be the last one off the call, just to let you know, because I want to make sure that if there's somebody wanted just private conversation, I'll stay online. Otherwise, everybody have a wonderful evening. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Jenna. Thank you, Matt. Val, thank you. Okay, Sean, we're down to you. Any questions? No, thank you. You too. Have a good night.